Speaking of Rob, Michael M., thank you very much. If Rob returns mostly healthy, who is on your early trade deadline wish list? Gallo or PP in a pick for Poeltl, low cost, pick up via buyout market. Stan Pat, thanks for the content, guys. I'll be honest, I haven't even begun to think about trading, trade prospects right now. I think they're a buyout. I think the Celtics are going to be a buyout team. They're going to wait and see who becomes available at the buyout market. And if you're a veteran, and there's always a couple that it's never it's never the top of the top, but you sometimes get a couple of solid vets that get bought out. They're looking to win a championship, and the Celtics should be, I would say, number one, number two option for a lot of these vets, especially depending on the position. You get a big man that gets bought out. I can't imagine why he wouldn't want to come here. There's clearly a role on this team for one. We don't know how Rob's going to look. I think we all assume and hope that he's going to look somewhat like his old self. We don't know exactly when. I think Woj reported before Christmas. Our guy Sherrod seems to think it might even be sooner than that. So I don't know. Did you see Rob in the building or anything tonight? Or
he didn't catch my eye tonight, though. He's been around the team. He's traveled on 2 road trips now, which is always encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I caught up with him in New York. He said he's dunking, he's running, and this was 2-3 weeks ago now. So makes sense. The timeline we're piecing together through a couple of different reports there. But even when he does come back, we've talked about it. I think he's off the bench. I think he's ramping up slowly, getting his feet under him, conditioning. You have a knee surgery. Your conditioning is probably not going to be at its best coming back from that. So you want to have insurance. You want to have depth. I like what Kornet's doing right now. But the question that they're going to have to ask with Kornet and Hauser specifically, as great as they've been to start this year, is can those guys play in a playoff series and specifically against a tough matchup? Because I think last couple of games here, why doesn't Kornet play? Is it Sabonis on the other end? Is it who's on Wednesday? McGee and Christian Wood? Like, do they not like those matchups against some of the more powerful offensive centers? Hopefully, Joe talks about that a little bit tonight. But if they're not confident in being able to go to this array of depth that they have lower on the roster, there's a pretty good argument for consolidating a little bit, right? Now, I don't know if it's Jakob Poeltl that we're focused on here. It's $9 million. You can't trade Gallinari back to the Spurs, I've learned. Remember he got traded to the Spurs in that Murray trade. So that was the last team he played for, got bought out, came to the Celtics. So you can't use Gallinari in that trade. So it'd have to be Pritchard, Kornet, Jackson, Vonleh. That gets you to about $8 million.
Pritchard, the Pritchard poo-poo platter. Is that what we're calling that?
Mm-hmm. So, and then, what do you send out for a pick? You traded a pick for Brogdon this year. You don't have that. You don't have your 2028 because of the White trade. So you could do a swap next year, though the Spurs are going to probably be worse than the Celtics next year. So I don't think they'll want that. Do you give up a 25 pick? Do you give up a pick in 2027 on those odd years? Do you unprotect that 28 pick? You could do that with the Spurs. That's an advantage you have trading with them. I'm not super familiar with Poeltl. I know he's a great pick and roll player. I know he's not the best defensive center in the world, but he can do a lot of things offensively that this team likes while being a great rebounder. He averages 10 rebounds a game this year, 9 last year. So there's a lot of ways he could help them. He's a good passer, 3 assists per game the last couple of years here, and can really score the ball too, very efficient. So that's, you're looking for Rob insurance. Rob goes down again later this year. Rob needs some time off. That's a dream right there. But you give up some of your depth that you like here. All of a sudden, you're relying on on Brogdon a little bit more to stay healthy, or White. Certainly, if Smart or Brogdon go through anything at that point, because then you don't have a fourth guard outside of J.D. Davison, who's really not ready yet. It's a tough call. I don't know. Would you give up all those guys, maybe a pick or two, for depth insurance at center? Because if that guy,
no, absolutely not.
Because the tough, look at what Horford's done for them, Jimmy. If they lost him, they'd be devastated. Even with Rob coming back, I think. Because remember last playoffs, Rob was a nice, really contributing piece in the form he was in.
Yeah.
But Horford really drove them. And so you got to keep him fresh. They're playing him a ton every night. They're not really showing.
Yeah, what did he finish with tonight?
Probably a little less because of that
27.
Run.
Yeah, 27. That's where you want him to be, though. Yeah. Like if you can play upper 20s for Horford every night, none of this 34-minute stuff. That's too much. and a full NBA season. I know that I'm sure they'll give him rest, games off here and there, but he really shouldn't be up mid-low 30s, regularly. I think everyone would like to see him in the upper 20s. Maybe when Rob comes back, that happens. But I think, Kornet, for his warts, I think Kornet deserves some level of playing time, and if for the very least,
build up to that playoff level.
Exactly, to build up there, build some trust, just get comfortable out there with the guys, and to give Horford the rest that he needs, because that's when you're going to need him most, is in the playoffs. And I just, you want to be careful with this guy. He's been relatively healthy more recently, but he does have some kind of a history, we would say, with lower body and knee issues here and there. So you just want to do everything you can to preserve this guy, because you're already thin at that position, and you really can't afford anybody else to go down at one of those big positions.
He should play every night. I mean, you're talking about ramping down Horford's minutes. And try, you imagine the regular season. You're not trying to break the Warriors record here. You're trying to get everybody to the playoff. To not play Kornet at all, especially with what he's done this year in a game, just doesn't make sense to me. And they were almost going to do that tonight, it looked like. No minutes in the first half. Last 3 games here, he really hasn't played at all. It didn't make sense to me. Fortunately, Grant got into that trouble, and Missoula felt like he had to make a move there, and they got a huge boost out of it. Great screening, nice alley-oop finish, defensive plays, a couple blocks in a couple minutes. This is what this guy does. I think you can rely on him, at least in the regular season. And then come playoff time, it's either play Horford a ton, as they did last year, or have that Rob-Horford duo, ideally. And if you have Rob and Horford healthy come playoff time, you don't need Kornet's fine as an emergency guy. You don't need a Poeltl. And the other thing about Poeltl is he's a free agent next summer. So he's due a new contract. Horford's obviously due a new contract after this year. I know he talked to Heavy recently. I don't know if you saw that piece, Jimmy. He talked to Steve Bulpett and said he's focused on coming back to the Celtics next year. And
who is this?
This is Al Horford.
Oh, okay.
He's focused on. He's not even thinking about retirement. And that's something I've heard, talking to people around him and, family members and all that, is he's not eyeing retirement anytime soon. He's doing the Brady.
I was going to say, he's the Tom Brady of the NBA.
Yeah. He loves playing basketball. He's got his family, right? I think he's got a 5th kid on the way. So at some point he's going to want to, be
no, he's going to want to keep playing then, if that's
So, I mean, it sounds like Horford's intent on staying. Grant, you just said, is it $20 million? Maybe you do want a Poeltl in there in case Grant, wants the big bucks and ends up out of here. So, again, it's a really tricky discussion. There's now been 2 reports that have linked them to Poeltl. You're giving up a lot there. But, again, this is a championship year, and is he that last piece that really solidifies your rotation, gives you insurance? Like, you don't want to lose the championship because Rob's hurting again. Like, you just don't want to be in that position.
They have a decision to make at some point, but it's not yet, and I think that's why.
And it doesn't have to be Poeltl; it could be someone else.
Right, absolutely. I think we all agree that they need to be more safe than sorry, and depth's important. I just think at that point, depending on if you're the Celtics, depending on where you think Rob's going to be, I think we'll really go a long way in whether they decide, okay, do we want to trade for somebody or do we want to wait for the buyout market? And I think we'll learn that. We're not going to learn that obviously until we get much further along into the season. We got to see how Rob looks. So it's a conversation starter, but at this point it's just a pure guessing game.